Hey, what's going on? This isn't the house I saw in the blueprints.
Mike's voice boomed in anger as he saw the house he had been looking forward to. Well, yes, I had the plans redrawn. It's your own fault for not checking, Mike. I almost got tricked, but I am so glad I realized it just in time. I am Kate, 54 years old. My husband passed away from an illness 2 years ago, and now I live alone. I have one son who lives far away. My family situation is a bit complicated. I was adopted by my uncle and his wife when I was in high school. My uncle and his wife didn't have children and wanted me to inherit the traditional craftsmanship skills that have been passed down since my great-grandfather's time, so they adopted me with that hope. They actually wanted to adopt Mike, who is male, but my parents refused. I didn't like studying and had no intention of going to college, so I was happy to be adopted and chose the path of becoming a craftsman. Unfortunately, both my uncle and aunt fell ill and have since passed away. I'm grateful that I was able to fully inherit their craftsmanship before they died. When they passed, I officially took over the family business and moved to the old workshop to the city. I also bought an apartment nearby to live in. I inherited and have been managing the house and the old workshop where my uncle and aunt live. That's why after not seeing each other for a few years, Mike along with Jane came to visit me. Jane and I don't really get along and tend to avoid each other, so when Jane showed up, I was quite surprised.
Hey, the land where your uncle's house is, can you let us build a house there?
He suddenly said this out of the blue. What? Why? I was confused, and then Jane chimed in. Isn't it a great location? It's a waste to leave it vacant. He has quit his job and paying rent is getting tough, so we want our own house. You understand, right? She was smiling, but I couldn't smile at all. Mike, who's only good at being serious, is not very quick-witted and is quite stubborn. He hasn't been able to build good relationship at work, fell off the career track, and has now taken early retirement. At 58, he's too young for a pension and is struggling to pay rent, so he probably wants his own house. Jane has been eyeing my parents' house to inherit it as her own since they got married, but my father, though suffering from dementia and living in a facility, is still alive. Not knowing when the inheritance will happen, she seems to have set her sights on my uncle's house. Are you asking me to sell that land to you?
What are you talking about? You don't understand anything. I've retired and quit my job. There's no way I have the money to buy land.
He arrogantly stated his own lack of ambition. Mike is just too embarrassing. And then he added,
just because you were adopted, it's unfair that you get all the inheritance. You know what? I'm supposed to be the one adopted. You stole that from me. I've always been dissatisfied. That house should have been mine. You got a profession and a secure future. At least give me the house. You're such a greedy woman.
So that's what he had been thinking. I finally understood why Mike and I had become distant. It seems he was always dissatisfied with the fact that I was adopted by my uncle despite our parents' wishes. When Mike was out partying in college, I endured tough training, but I guess that doesn't matter to Mike. Feeling unfairly accused and lacking the energy to argue, I reluctantly agreed and sent Mike and his wife home. But I felt uneasy about it, and the next day I found myself regretting it in front of my uncle and aunt's grave. My aunt used to talk about turning the house with its large property into a shelter for rescue dogs someday. I had planned to fulfill that dream, but now that I've agreed, I guess there is nothing I can do. I have already given my consent, so I guess there is nothing else I can do but accept it. A month later, Jane showed up unannounced. Kate, I've got the blueprints of the house. Can you take a look? She excitedly spread the blueprints on my work table, not caring that there were important things there. It's this kind of brazen behavior that makes Jane hard to deal with. Reluctantly, I paused my work to look at the blueprints. What is this? A duplex? There was a layout for a duplex on the blueprint. I was initially happy thinking they planned to take my father out of the facility and care for him. What a wonderful plan, I thought, but my happiness was quickly shattered. Yes, it's for my parents to live with us. Your parents? Jane's parents on my land? Isn't that a bit odd? This comment made Jane angry. Huh? What's odd about it? Your parents are in a facility, right? It's obvious that the duplex is for my parents. Don't you get that? Are you stupid or something? I'm stupid? This is clearly unreasonable. We have already paid the deposit, so it's non-negotiable. I didn't come here to get your okay just to show off. And if you don't like it and want to change it, you'll have to pay a $10,000 fee. I thought it was terrible to go ahead with such an important matter without my permission as a landowner just to show off, but I don't want to pay $10,000 to change it. Right, I should check with Mike, so I decided to call Mike. Hello, Mike? Jane just showed me the blueprints. What's this about a duplex with Jane's parents? What about Dad?
Since we are married, Jane's parents are my parents too. It's only natural to take care of them. Jane wanted to live together, so we compromised with a duplex. Dad is in a facility. But Jane's parents don't have money to go anywhere. It's pitiful, right? So we'll take care of them. I'm not asking for your permission, so just leave us alone.
He hung up after saying that. As I stood there stunned, Jane, with a triumphant look, packed up the blueprints and left. When Dad was diagnosed with dementia...
Dad's got dementia. I don't know anything about that. You, who were adopted and neglected your duties, should take care of him.
Mike, who had dumped everything on me and rarely visited Dad in the facility, is going to take care of his wife's parents? That's unacceptable. I couldn't forgive it. Later, I received a call that Dad had worsened a cold and was hospitalized with pneumonia. I hurried to visit him. Fortunately, it was a mild case and he looked well. Pneumonia can be dangerous at his age, so I couldn't relax until I saw his face. Relieved, I stepped out of the room to get a drink and heard a voice from behind a corner. It's a shame he didn't die. We would have gotten the inheritance. Really disappointing. I was appalled to realize it was Jane speaking, wishing for someone's death. That's how she thought? What does she think of other people's parents? I won't let her have her way. I'll definitely put them in their place somehow. So I made up my mind. Once Dad was discharged and I had a moment to breathe, Mike and his wife showed up again. I was busy with piled up work, but they forced me to stop, wondering what they wanted. It turned out they needed to pay an architect and a home builder to proceed with the house construction. I thought they should just pay the money, but then, my parents will be living with us. When your father entered the facility, you paid a lump sum, right? My parents don't need that. So I think we have the right to get that money, so we need $80,000 from you to help with the building costs. That's fair, isn't it? I couldn't understand what she was saying. It seems that although I have spent money on my father, I haven't done the same for Jane's parents. While my father, having money, can enjoy his later years comfortably, Jane's parents, lacking funds, are unable to have a satisfying retirement. Since we were related by marriage, she thought it was unfair there was a difference in treatment. Don't you think what you're saying is strange? Why should I be the one to pay that money? Shouldn't Jane be paying? I have already provided the land, and that's more than enough. Jane got angry when I said that. So you don't care what happens to my parents? She yelled and began to cry. Mike, comforting Jane, said,
You have the inheritance from your uncle and a secure job and money. I got the short end of the stick being left at home as the eldest son. You can afford $80,000. If you don't pay, I'll make sure you can't work anymore. Just deposit the money here without complaining. He put a piece of paper with the bank details on the desk and left, carrying Jane in his arms. I was speechless at their unreasonable logic and left without a chance to argue. Then I started to feel angry. What was that? Such awful things they said, as if I hadn't struggled to get where I am today. Being adopted was lonely for me too, and the training was tough. I knew all about Mike and his fun times. I wanted to say so much, but they were already gone and there was no one to listen. Reluctantly, I checked the note Mike left, and the account to deposit $80,000 was oddly Mike's own, not a home builder's or an architect's office. Something felt off, so I inquired and was told they made no such request to $80,000. It didn't make sense to be asked for such a large unrequested amount. A little research revealed why Mike and Jane were so fixated on money. So I decided to transfer just $20,000 for now and see what happens. As soon as I confirmed the transfer, Mike called. Hey Kate, the amount is wrong. I said $80,000. Why only $20,000? He was fussing about the amount. You know, $80,000 isn't an amount I can prepare immediately, right? I had to break into my savings, so I transferred that much for now. You seemed in a hurry. After hearing that, perhaps reassured by the money coming in? Oh, well, why didn't you say that? Sorry for shouting. When you get the rest of the $60,000, send it over, okay?
He ended the call sounding pleased. My brother, as always, is a smooth operator. After the transfer issue had settled and I had a moment to relax, I got a call saying I needed to go to the home builder's office to sign a contract. It's really troublesome, especially since it's not even my own house. They insisted it had to be done today, so I canceled my work plans and headed there. I thought for sure Mike and his wife would be there, but they didn't show up. When I called to find out what was happening,
We are about to go on a training trip with Jane. Don't bother us.
he hung up immediately. A training trip? I was told by the salesperson that they wanted to open a bar with a foreign vibe, fulfilling a long-held dream. So they were going to Europe to study. A foreign-themed bar? That was news to me. I was told they wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. That got me thinking. Mike and his wife, who were so fixated on money, I can't believe they would have the funds for a 2-week overseas trip. The $20,000 I had recently sent, the salesperson confirmed they hadn't received any payment of $20,000, so it was almost certainly used for their trip. Sighing deeply, the home builder's representative noticed my frustration.
Are you sure you want to go through with this contract? It's still possible to make changes or cancel it.
He said, building a house on someone else's land often leads to trouble, and that's why they were hesitant about this project. That's why they called me, the landowner, for a final confirmation. In that case, I couldn't forgive Mike and his wife for their words and actions, nor did I want to reconcile and be friendly with them in the future. So I decided to change the design to a rescue dog shelter cum cafe, fulfilling my aunt's dream. The loan contract was already completed, so I paid for the additional costs that arose. After returning from the trip, Mike and his wife called me once.
You took care of the contract, right?
Of course, construction has already started, don't worry. They never came to check on the construction. Thankfully, the charges to the floor plan remained a secret until completion. When the house was finally completed, Mike and his wife, who were excited to come and see it, were stunned at the sight. When asked by the representative for their thoughts,
What's going on here? This isn't what the blueprints showed. Call the person in charge.
He yelled, but the representative, with a calm demeanor, said,
The final contract we received with a signature was this one.
And upon being shown the blueprint that I had requested to be revised, they were left speechless. Jane's parents, excited to live with their daughter, were shocked and burst into tears at the unexpected situation. They had even sold their own home in preparation for this day. Now, with nowhere to live, they were demanding that Mike and his wife do something. But what's done is done, right? With Mike and his wife's apartment also terminated in anticipation of the house's completion, all 4 of them ended without a place to live. Since Jane's parents were already there, I let them hear what Jane had said at my father's hospital. I had secretly recorded it. It's funny, isn't it? That someone who says such things about their in-laws wants to live in a duplex with their own parents? Everyone fell silent at my attempt to turn it into a joke. Mike, desperate to secure a home, apologized deeply and begged for all 4 of them to be allowed to stay. Since the loan was contracted for these 2 families, it made sense. Thus, according to my plan, Mike and his family ended up living in that house. I had consulted a lawyer recommended by the home builder skilled in such matters. Surprisingly, this lawyer was a close friend of my uncle. He was incensed that his dear friend's legacy was being mishandled and helped me devise a counter-strategy. The first step in the plan was for me to report to the tax authorities. As a result, Mike and his wife were subjected to gift tax, and the money Jane's parents received from selling their home was used to pay this tax. Then a lawsuit was filed, and they had to pay rent for the land, which is an area with top-class land price increases over the last decade. The rent turned out to be high due to the ample space for a dog run which Jane had targeted. As a result, Mike, who had already quit his job, and Jane's parents, who were living on a pension, couldn't afford to pay the rent. They were forced to leave as they could no longer afford to sustain their living expenses. The family, my brothers, asked to stay until they found a new place to live. But at that moment, I revealed some crucial information. Apparently, Jane was in debt to some dangerous people. The demand for $80,000 before construction was likely for that payment. I consulted a distant relative of Jane's, a client of my uncle, who agreed to temporarily cover $20,000 and sent it to Mike. This relative had helped Jane's family financially in the past. In a letter they entrusted to me for Jane's family, it read, "Don't do anything more that would embarrass us as relatives. We have covered your debt this one time, so work off your debt in our factory day and night with your whole family living on site." Thus, Mike's family left the house burdened with a mortgage and family debt. They now live in a rundown apartment, once a staff dormitory for the relative's factory, where all four work tirelessly. I was lucky not to be swindled out of $80,000 and managed to prepare for realizing my aunt's dream. I made the first floor barrier-free so my father could leave the facility and live with me. The entry fee from his return from the facility allowed me to hire a helper, which has been a great relief. As I'm getting older, I'm planning for my son to take over in a few years, and I hope to spend my days making dogs happy.